The people who change your life rarely arrive through the front door. Sometimes they stand on a sidewalk holding flowers. Every morning at exactly 8 o'clock, I entered the same building. The glass tower rose above Midtown Manhattan like a monument to money, power, and ambition. Thousands of people pass through its doors every week. Executives, lawyers, investors, politicians. Most of them blurred together. Faces, names, conversations. None of it stayed with me for very long. Yet somehow a flower seller on the corner managed to do what none of them could. She made me look twice. The first time I noticed her, she was arranging white roses beneath a small green umbrella. The city moved around her in a constant rush of noise and motion. Taxi horns echoed through the streets. Pedestrians hurried toward offices with coffee cups in their hands. Yet she seemed completely unaffected by the chaos. Calm, focused, almost peaceful. I remember slowing my pace as I passed her stand. Buckets overflowed with roses, lilies, daisies, and sunflowers. Bright colors against gray concrete. For a moment the entire corner felt different because she was there. Then I noticed something else. One white rose remained separate from the others. She placed it carefully in a glass vase beside her chair. Not for sale. Not displayed with the bouquets. Just waiting. The next morning it was there again. So was she. Blonde hair gathered loosely behind her shoulders. Light blue sweater beneath a simple coat. A warm smile for every customer who approached. I watched from the lobby window while security opened the front doors for me. "Good morning, Mr. Russo." I barely heard them. My attention remained fixed on the woman outside. "Who is she?" I asked. The guard followed my gaze. "The flower girl?" "Yes." He shrugged. "Not sure. She has been here a few months." Few months. Strange. Somehow I had only just noticed her. After that, I began looking for her every morning. Not intentionally. At least that was what I told myself. Yet each day my eyes found her before anything else. She always arrived before sunrise. Always arranged the flowers herself. Always kept that single white rose beside her chair. One morning, an elderly man stopped at her stand. I watched from across the street while she handed him a bouquet. He searched his pockets. His expression fell. Even from a distance I could tell he did not have enough money. The flower seller smiled. Then she gave him the bouquet anyway. The old man's eyes widened. He tried to protest. She simply shook her head. Moments later he walked away carrying the flowers and smiling like he had won the lottery. The transaction bothered me for the rest of the day. Not because she lost money. Because she seemed genuinely happy about it. Most people spent their lives calculating what they could gain. She appeared more interested in what she could give away. That evening I found myself thinking about her again. By the end of the week, I knew her routine almost as well as my own. And one detail never changed. Every day she sold every flower except one. Every evening she packed up her stand and carried home the final white rose. The question followed me everywhere. Why save it? Why never sell it? The following Monday, as I stepped from my car, a sudden gust of wind knocked a folded card from beneath the vase holding that white rose. Before she could grab it, the paper slid across the sidewalk and stopped directly at my feet. The card stopped against the polished toe of my shoe. For a moment, neither of us moved. Morning traffic continued flowing around the corner. People hurried past carrying briefcases and coffee cups. A bus hissed to a stop across the street. Yet somehow the noise faded into the background. My attention remained fixed on the small folded card resting on the sidewalk between us. The flower seller reacted first. She stepped forward quickly, a faint blush appearing on her cheeks. "I am sorry," she said. Her voice was softer than I expected. "The wind is stronger than it looks today." I bent down and picked up the card before it could blow away again. Up close, I noticed tiny pressed flower petals decorating the edges. Someone had made it by hand. Carefully, thoughtfully. Before handing it back, I accidentally caught a glimpse of the writing inside. Just one sentence. "For Mom." The words stayed with me even after she slipped the card safely into her coat pocket. "Thank you," she said. Then she smiled. Not the practiced smile people used in business meetings. A genuine one. Warm enough to make a cold Manhattan morning feel different. "You are welcome." For several seconds she seemed surprised that I had answered. as though most people simply walked past her without stopping. Then another customer approached her stand and the moment ended. I entered the building, but my thoughts remained outside. Throughout the morning, I found myself wondering about the card. For Mom. 3 simple words. Yet somehow they felt connected to the white rose she carried home every evening. At noon I looked down from my office window. The flower stand remained exactly where it always was. Lily Bennett. I finally knew her name because I had asked one of the building attendants. Somehow the name suited her perfectly. Simple. Bright. Unpretentious. She was helping a young mother choose flowers while a little girl stood beside her holding a pink balloon. A few moments later, Lily tucked a daisy behind the child's ear. The little girl laughed. Even from 40 floors above the street, I could see the joy on her face. Lily gave away another flower. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. That afternoon, a meeting dragged on for nearly 2 hours. Investors argued over numbers. Lawyers discussed contracts. Nobody noticed my attention drifting toward the windows. Eventually the meeting ended, and I immediately looked down toward the corner. Lily was still there. The crowd had thinned. The afternoon sunlight painted the city in shades of gold. And beside her chair sat the same white rose. Untouched. Waiting. When evening finally arrived, I watched something I had never seen before. Lily packed away every remaining flower. Then she lifted the white rose from the vase with surprising care. Instead of placing it with the others, she held it gently against her chest. Almost like something precious. My curiosity grew stronger. The next morning I arrived earlier than usual. Lily was already there arranging fresh bouquets. The city had not fully awakened yet. The sidewalks were quiet. Steam drifted from street grates into the cool autumn air. For the first time I saw her before the customers arrived. Before the smiles. Before the conversations. She looked tired. Not unhappy. Just exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that came from carrying responsibilities nobody else could see. Then something unexpected happened. An elderly woman approached the stand slowly using a cane. Lily's entire expression changed. She immediately picked up the white rose and handed it to her. The woman looked shocked. They spoke briefly. Then the older woman embraced her. Tears appeared in the woman's eyes before she walked away carrying the rose. I stood frozen beside the entrance, because the white rose was finally gone, and somehow that moment raised far more questions than answers. Then Lily reached beneath her table and carefully placed another white rose into the empty vase. The second white rose changed everything. Until that morning, I had convinced myself there was probably a simple explanation. A sentimental habit. A personal tradition. Something ordinary. But watching Lily replace the flower only moments after giving the first one away destroyed that theory completely. This was not coincidence. It was a ritual. And for reasons I could not explain, I needed to understand it. The following week, I found myself paying even closer attention. Every morning began the same way. Lily arrived before most of the city. She arranged her flowers carefully. She greeted strangers like old friends. She smiled more than anyone I knew. And every day, a single white rose waited in the vase beside her chair. Yet what fascinated me most was not the flower itself. It was the people who received it. They were never customers. They were never wealthy. They never seemed to expect it. On Tuesday, she gave the white rose to a hospital janitor who stopped by on his way to work. On Wednesday, it went to a tired young father carrying a sleeping child in his arms. On Thursday, she handed it to a woman sitting alone on a nearby bench staring at the sidewalk with tears in her eyes. Every recipient reacted the same way. Surprise. Gratitude. Emotion. As though Lily somehow knew exactly who needed kindness that day. You are distracted again. Luca dropped into the chair across from my desk and loosened his tie. This is becoming a pattern. I looked away from the window. I am working. You spent 10 minutes watching a flower stand. 9 minutes. Luca laughed. You know, most men would simply introduce themselves. I ignored him. The truth was becoming difficult to admit, even to myself. I thought about Lily more than I should have. Not because I knew her. Because I did not. Every answer seemed to create 3 new questions. That Friday, rain covered Manhattan in a gray curtain. Water streamed down the glass of my office windows. Pedestrians rushed beneath umbrellas. Most street vendors packed up and left before noon. By 2 o'clock, only a handful remained outside. Lily was one of them. She stood beneath her umbrella protecting the flowers from the weather. Her coat was damp. Her hands looked cold. Yet she continued smiling at every customer who approached. Something about that bothered me. Near closing time, I finally stopped pretending I was not concerned. "Have someone bring coffee downstairs," I told an assistant. "To the flower stand." The assistant blinked. "Just coffee. And pastries." She nodded and left without asking questions. 30 minutes later, I watched from the lobby as the delivery arrived. Lily looked confused when she accepted the bag. She searched the sidewalk as if trying to identify who had sent it. For a brief moment, her eyes scanned the building entrance. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Then she smiled. Not because she knew it was me, because someone had been kind. The simplicity of that realization stayed with me all evening. The next morning, the rain was gone. Sunshine reflected from glass towers across the city. As I stepped from my car, I noticed something unusual. Lily was not arranging flowers. She was reading a letter. Her expression seemed different. More serious. More fragile. A few moments later, she folded the paper carefully and placed it inside her bag. Then she looked toward the skyline and took a deep breath. For the first time since I had known her, she looked worried. Truly worried. And when she reached beneath the stand and pulled out the white rose, I noticed a small black ribbon tied around its stem. The black ribbon stayed in my mind all day. It transformed the white rose into something else entirely. A message. A symbol. A warning. I did not know which. But I knew it mattered. By lunchtime, I had replayed the image dozens of times. Lily standing beneath the morning sunlight. The folded letter. The worried expression. The ribbon tied carefully around the stem of the flower she protected every day. None of it felt accidental. For the first time since I had noticed her outside my building, curiosity gave way to concern. That evening, I left the office later than usual. The city glowed beneath thousands of lights. Traffic crawled through intersections. Most businesses had already closed. As my driver pulled away from the curb, I glanced toward the corner out of habit. The flower stand was gone. So was Lily. Yet something caught my attention. A small white object rested near the base of a street lamp. "Stop the car." The driver obeyed immediately. I stepped onto the sidewalk and walked back toward the corner. The object was a single white rose. The ribbon remained tied around the stem. Carefully, I picked it up. Beneath the ribbon, folded around the flower, was a small piece of paper. My pulse quickened. The note contained only 4 words. "1 year today, Mom." I stared at the message for several seconds. Suddenly, everything began making sense. The card. The white roses. The elderly woman who had received one. The emotion on Lily's face. The careful way she treated every flower. This was not a business ritual. It was personal. Deeply personal. The next morning, Lily appeared as usual. Yet something had changed. Her smile remained, but it seemed quieter. More fragile. Around noon, I watched her close the stand unexpectedly. She packed the flowers hours earlier than normal. Then she carried a bouquet of white roses across the street and disappeared into a nearby church. Without thinking, I followed. The church sat between 2 office buildings, nearly hidden from the sidewalk. Inside, sunlight filtered through stained glass windows. The sanctuary was empty except for a few scattered visitors. Lily stood near the front beside a wall covered with memorial candles. She placed the bouquet beneath one of them. Then she sat alone in the first pew. Her shoulders trembled slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough to reveal the weight she had been carrying. For the first time, I saw the sadness behind the smiles. I should have left. The moment was private. Yet something held me there. Perhaps it was the realization that kindness often hides pain. The people who spend their lives giving comfort are not always the people receiving it. After several minutes, Lily stood and walked toward the exit. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Surprise flashed across her face. Then embarrassment. "Mr. Russo." It was the first time she had spoken my name. "You know who I am?" I asked. A faint smile appeared despite everything. "Most people in this neighborhood know who you are." "Fair enough." Silence settled between us. Neither of us seemed certain what to say next. Finally, I glanced toward the bouquet near the candles. Your mother. Lily followed my gaze. For a moment, I thought she might avoid the question. Instead, she nodded. She loved white roses. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Every year I bring her one. My chest tightened unexpectedly. I am sorry. Lily smiled sadly. It has been a year. Some days it feels like yesterday. The honesty in her words lingered between us. Then she looked at me carefully. You found the note, did you not? I froze. Because suddenly I realized she knew far more about my attention than I had ever imagined. For a second, neither of us moved. The quiet church seemed to shrink around us. Colored sunlight filtered through stained glass and painted soft patterns across the floor. Somewhere near the entrance, a candle flickered gently. Yet all I could focus on was Lily's question. You found the note, did you not? There was no accusation in her voice. No anger. Only curiosity. Perhaps even amusement. I let out a slow breath. The one tied to the rose? She nodded. Yes. Then yes. A small smile appeared. I thought so. That answer raised more questions than it solved. You expected someone to find it. Lily looked toward the memorial candles. Not someone. You. The honesty caught me completely off guard. For months I had been observing her from a distance, convinced that my attention went unnoticed. Now, standing inside a quiet church, I was beginning to understand how wrong I had been. How long? I asked. How long what? How long have you known? Her smile widened slightly. Long enough. I laughed despite myself. That is not an answer. It is the only one you are getting. For the first time since meeting her, the sadness in her expression seemed lighter, as though speaking openly had lifted some invisible weight. Together we stepped outside into the cool afternoon air. Manhattan continued moving around us with its usual urgency. People rushed between meetings. Traffic crawled through intersections. Yet the world somehow felt different now that a wall between us had finally disappeared. We walked slowly back toward her flower stand. My mother used to tell me something, Lily said after a few moments. What was that? She looked ahead. You can learn a great deal about people by watching what they notice. I immediately understood where the conversation was heading. And what did I notice? The flowers. She smiled. The white rose. Then she glanced at me. And eventually me. There was no arrogance in her words. Just simple truth. I found myself smiling back. When we reached the stand, she began arranging bouquets while we talked. Customers came and went. Yet somehow the conversation continued naturally between sales. I learned that her mother had owned a flower shop in Brooklyn. I learned that Lily had inherited both the business and her love of flowers. Most importantly, I learned why she gave away the white roses. Mom believed flowers should go to people who need hope, she explained while trimming stems. Not just people who can afford them. I looked toward the fresh white rose sitting in the vase. So every day you choose someone. She nodded. Every day. The simplicity of the tradition made it even more powerful. Around sunset, business slowed. Golden light stretched across the street. For the first time I stayed after most. Customers had gone. Lily was counting the day's earnings when her expression suddenly changed. The smile disappeared. Her shoulders tensed. She unfolded a letter from her bag and stared at it silently. Concern returned immediately. What is wrong? I asked. She hesitated, then handed me the paper. It was an overdue notice. Rent. Utilities. Several bills combined into one amount. Nothing impossible, but clearly overwhelming for someone running a small flower stand. Lily looked embarrassed. I will figure it out. The determination in her voice was genuine. Yet I could see exhaustion beneath it. Suddenly many things made sense. The long hours. The tired eyes. The quiet moments when she thought nobody was watching. She had been carrying far more than flowers. Before I could say anything, she carefully folded the letter and slipped it away. Then she picked up the white rose from the vase. Her gaze lingered on it longer than usual. Tomorrow's rose already has a recipient, she said softly. I frowned. Who? Lily looked directly into my eyes. And for the first time since I had known her, the answer seemed meant specifically for me. The next morning arrived brighter than usual. Sunlight reflected from the glass towers surrounding the avenue, turning the city into a maze of gold and silver. Yet all I could think about was Lily's final sentence from the night before. Tomorrow's rose already has a recipient. Who? The question followed me through dinner, through late-night reports, even through the few hours of sleep I managed to get. By 8 o'clock, I was standing near the entrance of my building, watching her arrange fresh flowers beneath the green umbrella. The white rose sat in its vase as always, waiting. Lily looked up and smiled the moment she saw me. Not surprised. Not nervous. Almost as if she had expected me to arrive early. "Good morning, Mr. Russo." "Good morning." She glanced at the white rose. "You seem curious." "That obvious?" Her laughter was warm enough to make several passing pedestrians smile without knowing why. "A little." Throughout the morning, I watched customer after customer approach the stand. Lily sold bouquets, gave away daisies, shared conversations. Yet the white rose remained untouched. Noon arrived. Then 2 o'clock. Then 4. Still the flower waited. Finally, as the afternoon sun began sinking between the buildings, Lily stepped away from the stand carrying the rose. My pulse quickened. She crossed the sidewalk and stopped directly in front of me. For a moment neither of us spoke. The noise of Manhattan faded into the background. The white rose seemed impossibly bright in the golden light. Then she held it out to me. "This one is yours." I stared at her in disbelief. "Mine." She nodded. "You have needed it for a while." Of all the answers I expected, that was not one of them. "Why?" Lily looked at me carefully. The same way she studied the people who received her flowers. "Because you spend your life taking care of everyone else." Her voice remained gentle. "But nobody takes care of you." The words landed harder than they should have. For a second I could not respond. Most people saw the expensive suits, the influence, the confidence. Very few looked beyond those things. Somehow Lily had. Slowly I accepted the flower. "Thank you." A softness entered her smile. "You are welcome." That should have been the end of it. Instead, it became the beginning. 2 days later, something unusual happened. When Lily arrived at her stand, a new refrigeration unit was waiting beside it. Professional grade. Brand new. Large enough to preserve flowers for days. Her eyes widened immediately. She looked around searching for an explanation. None appeared. The following week, permits she had been struggling to obtain for months were suddenly approved. Then a nearby bakery began providing unsold pastries at the end of every day. Then a florist wholesaler offered significantly better pricing. One good thing after another. Small changes. Helpful changes. The kind that transformed difficult months into manageable ones. Lily suspected someone was helping. She simply did not know who. Every time she mentioned the strange improvements, I pretended ignorance. "Maybe the universe likes flower sellers," I suggested once. She laughed. "That is not how business works." The truth was simple. I never wanted her to feel indebted. Kindness loses something when it demands recognition. Yet keeping the secret became increasingly difficult. One evening, I arrived outside the building and noticed Lily standing beside her flower stand holding a folder. Her expression was stunned. "What happened?" I asked. Slowly, she handed me the papers. The city had approved a permanent storefront opportunity through a neighborhood revitalization program. Rent assistance included. Flower shop included. Future included. Lily's hands trembled slightly. "This changes everything," she whispered. Then she looked up at me with suspiciously knowing eyes. "Tell me something honestly, Dominic." It was the first time she had used my first name. And somehow that made the question far more dangerous. For several long seconds I simply looked at her. The evening sun painted the street in shades of amber and gold. Around us people hurried home from work. Taxi horns echoed between buildings. Yet everything beyond Lily seemed strangely distant. Her question hung in the air between us. "Tell me something honestly, Dominic." I already knew what came next. The only thing I did not know was whether I was ready to answer. "All right," I said quietly. Lily held up the folder containing the storefront approval. "Was this you?" Direct. Simple. Impossible to avoid. I looked at the papers, then at her. then back at the papers again. Most people would have lied, offered some convenient explanation. I found that I did not want to lie to her. Part of it, I admitted. Lily exhaled slowly. Not shocked, not angry, almost relieved. I knew it. A small smile appeared despite myself. How? Because every good thing started happening right after you started paying attention. The answer made me laugh softly. That is not evidence. No, she smiled. But it is a very suspicious coincidence. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then her expression grew more serious. Why? That question mattered more. I could see it in her eyes. She was not asking about permits or refrigeration units. She was asking why I cared at all. The truth surprised even me. Because you reminded me that kindness still exists. Lily blinked. That is all. No, I looked toward the flower stand. At first, I thought I was watching someone sell flowers. My gaze returned to hers. Then I realized I was watching someone make people's lives better every single day. The city seemed quieter somehow. You gave away flowers when you could barely afford to. I continued. You treated strangers like they mattered. My voice softened. You made an entire corner of Manhattan feel different. Lily looked down briefly. When she looked back up, her eyes were shining. Nobody has ever said anything like that to me. Then they were not paying attention. The words escaped before I could stop them. For a second, emotion flickered across her face. Then she laughed softly and shook her head. You know something funny? What? When I first noticed you, I thought you looked intimidating. I have heard that before. But every morning, you stopped and looked at the flowers before entering the building. Her smile widened. Nobody intimidating does that. I laughed despite myself. The tension between us finally eased. Over the following weeks, construction began on the new flower shop. Every afternoon after work, I found reasons to walk past the site. Lily pretended not to notice. She always noticed. The shop slowly transformed from an empty storefront into something beautiful. Fresh paint, wooden shelves, large front windows, space for hundreds of flowers, space for dreams that had once seemed impossible. One evening I arrived to find Lily standing alone inside the unfinished shop. The setting sun streamed through the windows behind her. Boxes sat stacked against the walls. The room smelled faintly of fresh wood and paint. She was holding something in her hands. A white rose. Another recipient? I asked. Lily smiled. Actually, yes. She walked toward me slowly. The last one. My eyebrows lifted. The last one. She nodded. Mom always said the final white rose should go to the person who changed your life. For a moment I could not speak. Lily extended the flower toward me. I think she would approve of my choice. The rose felt impossibly light in my hand. Yet somehow it carried the weight of every morning we had shared. Every conversation, every small act of kindness that had brought us here. Then Lily reached into her bag and removed a folded envelope. My name was written across the front. What is this? I asked. Her smile turned mysterious. Something I have wanted to tell you for a very long time. For several seconds I simply stared at the envelope. The unfinished flower shop around us seemed unusually quiet. Evening sunlight stretched across the wooden floor. Dust particles drifted through beams of gold pouring from the front windows. Somewhere outside, traffic moved through the city as it always had. Yet inside that small space, time felt slower. More important. Lily watched me with a nervous smile. You should read it. I looked down at my name written across the front in careful handwriting. Then I opened it. Inside was a single folded page. The first sentence immediately stopped me. Dear Dominic, if you are reading this, then I finally found the courage to say something I should have said months ago. My chest tightened unexpectedly. I continued reading. The letter was not long. Did not need to be. Lily wrote about the mornings outside the building. The first time she noticed me walking through the revolving doors. The days she wondered what kind of man arrived before everyone else and left after everyone else. The afternoon she caught me looking toward the flower stand when she thought I was not paying attention. A smile slowly appeared as I read. She had noticed everything. Every glance. Every pause. Every moment I believed belonged only to me. Then I reached the final paragraph. Sometimes people enter your life quietly. You do not hear them arrive. You only notice that things feel brighter when they are there. That is what happened to me. By the time I finished reading, I could not immediately find words. Lily stood a few feet away pretending to organize empty boxes while clearly waiting for a reaction. Finally, I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. You wrote this a long time ago. Her cheeks turned slightly pink. About 3 months. I laughed softly. 3 months. I was not planning to give it to you. Then why keep it? Lily looked down briefly. Hope. The answer was so honest that it left no room for anything else. Silence settled between us. Comfortable. Warm. Real. For once, neither of us seemed eager to fill it. Eventually, Lily walked toward the front windows overlooking the street. The familiar corner where her flower stand had stood for months was visible below. Do you know what I kept thinking after my mother died? She asked quietly. I joined her near the glass. What? She stared outside. That I would never feel excited about the future again. Her voice remained calm. Not because I stopped living. Because I stopped expecting anything good. The confession hit me harder than she realized. And now? I asked. Lily smiled. Now I am opening a flower shop. Then she looked at me. And somehow you are standing inside it. The city lights began appearing one by one beyond the windows. Office towers glowed against the darkening sky. The entire skyline seemed transformed. You know, I said, you changed something too. Her eyebrows lifted. What did I change? I thought about the answer carefully. Perspective. Lily laughed. That sounds serious. It is. I smiled. You reminded me that success and happiness are not the same thing. The laughter faded into something softer, more emotional. We stood there watching the city for several moments. Then Lily reached into a nearby bucket and removed a single white rose. Not the ceremonial kind she gave away each day. Just an ordinary flower. Yet somehow it felt meaningful. She handed it to me. One more. I asked. She nodded. For luck. I accepted it with a smile. Then my attention drifted toward the grand opening banner hanging near the entrance. The flower shop would officially open the following morning. A new beginning. A dream becoming real. Lily followed my gaze and laughed softly. You realize this means I will not be outside your building anymore. The words should have sounded simple. Instead, they felt strangely significant. Because for the first time since noticing her on that corner, I realized how much I would miss looking for her every morning. The flower shop opened on a bright Saturday morning beneath clear autumn skies. Long before the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, people had already gathered outside. Some were former customers from the sidewalk stand. Others were neighbors curious about the new business. Many simply wanted to support the woman who had spent months making their days a little brighter. Standing across the street, I watched Lily unlock the door for the first time. Sunlight poured through the large front windows, illuminating hundreds of flowers arranged throughout the shop. White roses, sunflowers, lilies, daisies. Every corner reflected her personality. Warm, welcoming, genuine. The moment she stepped inside, applause erupted from the crowd. Lily froze in surprise. Then she laughed. The sound carried across the sidewalk and somehow felt even more beautiful than the flowers surrounding her. Throughout the morning, the shop remained busy. Families browsed bouquets. Elderly couples stopped to congratulate her. Children pointed excitedly at colorful arrangements. The dream she had once believed impossible now stood right in front of her. Real. Thriving. Earned. Around noon, I finally crossed the street and entered the shop. A small bell chimed above the door. Lily looked up immediately. Her smile appeared before I had taken 2 steps inside. You made it. I would not miss this. She walked toward me through rows of flowers. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We simply looked around the shop together. The place suited her perfectly. Your mother would be proud, I said softly. Emotion flickered across her face. Then she nodded. I think she would. The afternoon passed quickly. By sunset, most of the crowd had disappeared. The city outside settled into its usual rhythm. Inside the shop, golden light filled the room. Lily sat behind the counter reviewing receipts while I helped move a few remaining boxes into storage. Eventually she looked up and smiled. This is probably not how powerful businessmen spend their Saturdays. Probably not. Then why are you here? The answer came easily. Because this matters. Her smile softened. Thank you. I shook my head. No, she looked confused. No. I glanced around the flower shop. Thank you. For a second she simply stared at me. Then she laughed quietly. For what? I thought about the first morning I noticed her. The green umbrella. The white rose. The way she gave away flowers when she needed the money herself. For reminding me that kindness is not weakness. My gaze moved across the shelves of flowers. For reminding me that helping people can change more than one life. Then I looked back at her. And for making me pay attention. Silence settled between us. Comfortable. Familiar. The kind that no longer needed explanations. Outside, evening lights began appearing throughout Manhattan. The city continued moving exactly as it always had. Yet somehow everything felt different. Lily reached beneath the counter and removed a small glass vase. Inside rested a single white rose. I smiled immediately. I was wondering if those were gone. Never. She carried the vase toward the front window overlooking the street where her flower stand once stood. Carefully she placed it on display. Who is this one for? I asked. Lily looked at the rose. Then at me. Nobody. Her smile widened. Everybody. The answer felt exactly right. Together we stood by the window watching pedestrians pass beneath the glow of city lights. Some noticed the flower shop. Some did not. Some stopped to admire the display. Others continued walking. Life moved forward. Simple. Ordinary. Beautiful. And as I stood beside Lily, I realized something important. I had spent years building towers, companies, and influence. Yet the most meaningful thing I had found was waiting beside a flower stand on a Manhattan sidewalk. Sometimes the people who change your life do not arrive with grand entrances. Sometimes they arrive carrying flowers. And sometimes, if you are fortunate enough to notice, they teach you that the smallest acts of kindness can bloom into something extraordinary.